A brief production note before we get underway. This is the first time we taped at a remote location, and in some cases, the sound quality isn't quite up to our usual standards. We apologize for that, and hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to the Semi-Retired Podcast with your hosts, Dave Farrant and...
me, Richard Bonomo.
Hey, Richard. How you doing this week?
Dave, I wanted to give an update. I tried your newly improved long-levered toilet handle.
Oh, Richard.
And it was fantastic. That
Isn't
extra leverage really
all
helps
about
you
the
flush.
leverage. I agree with you. So we've got something special for the listeners this week, Richard. For the first time, we are not alone. And when I say not alone, I'm not referring to an extraterrestrial visitation.
Episode 3.
Episode 3, by the way, for those who are interested, I'm referring to, drum roll.
Here we are with a special guest this week is photojournalist Peter McCabe. Although we assume it's Peter because he has a twin brother.
That's true.
Did we check, can we do a DNA sample on him? I don't know if that's going to work.
Am I allowed to talk yet?
No.
Peter, welcome to the podcast.
It looks like it's going to be a fun day.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Please pray for me.
You'll be fine.
You'll be fine.
or your brother will be fine. We're not sure yet.
Well, I'm kind of shy. I'm a very quiet kind of guy,
Yeah, right. It should be said that we've known each other, the three of us, for like 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
So if there's a degree of familiarity here, now you know why.
So Peter McCabe is a photojournalist, photographer for many years. Pete, how did you get started in photography?
Oh, I was a young lad growing up in New Hampshire and living out in the boondocks, where Mom and Dad are related in more ways than one. And my father had a friend, and she was a photographer from Boston who would come to our town to photograph a fall foliage festival. And she asked me if I wanted to assist her. And rather than assist her, she handed me a Pentax camera, a Spotmatic F, and 2 rolls of film and told me to walk around and just take pictures.
How old were you again?
I was 15.
15, okay.
And had you ever used the camera before?
I had
or just
never
was just
held
day
a
one?
camera before. So I went around for 2.5 days taking pictures with only 2.5 rolls of film. I never saw the pictures. I don't know how well I did. I know the second roll was probably the most spectacular since it wasn't winding very well, so I decided to open the back to find out why. So I don't know how those pictures came out. I think they were probably the better ones of the whole weekend. That's how it started, and I kind of had this interest, seeing the world through a viewfinder. I was aware of everything that was going on, but all of a sudden looking through a camera, you're now really looking at specific things. It was that weekend that I learned that when you look through a camera, you have to be very careful. You have to look at everything that you see in that viewfinder.
So basically the viewfinder is like an abstraction, a small portal into what you're seeing, and you got to pay attention.
When you look through the viewfinder, you need to see everything that's in that viewfinder. We tend to focus on a particular subject in that viewfinder. So if we're using a wide-angle lens, we're so concentrating on one particular part of that viewfinder that we forget about everything else. And then when we look at our pictures, we go, oh my God, they're so far away. So you have to look at everything in the viewfinder to determine how close you need to be and or how much to zoom in. That's probably the very first thing somebody's got to learn to do.
Yeah, so if I'm looking at a small child and photographing a small child, I've got to be aware of the environment and all the objects around that small child.
That's right.
Or I won't produce an effective photograph. Is that fair to say?
That's exactly, that's it. A lot of people take pictures of, wow, they just saw this amazing squirrel in the tree. And they put on a 50 millimeter lens or a 35 millimeter lens. And then when they can see the squirrel, because they're aware of the squirrel, they're watching the squirrel in that viewfinder. But then when they print their picture, they've also got the whole forest. So you don't see it anymore. Right. So you have to learn to not so much to concentrate on what it is you're looking at through the camera, but what the camera is seeing.
Yeah, the perfect example of that is the famous tree branch coming out of someone's head, right?
Exactly.
I think we're all guilty of doing that. I know I did it.
Charged.
No, not me. Never done it. Never. Telephone poles, yes, but no branches.
He did only on those first 2 rolls, which we've never saw.
He learned that's where he learned it. Never seen.
Those 2 rolls are somewhere I'd like to see one day.
So you were how old when you did this first project, roughly?
I was 15 years old.
15 years old, and in New Hampshire, you said,
That's right.
Okay.
That was October of 19... something or other. Anyways,
I love it when you can pin down a date.
it was back in 1974. So that was the weekend, the beginning of October. And so by the end of October, I had this real interest in photography. And so I had borrowed a Praktica camera off of a neighbor. I'd had it for a while. I'd had it for a couple of weeks when all of a sudden, one morning, I woke up and my father said to me, "Hey, pack your stuff. You're going to Montreal to live with your mom." Just like that. I was supposed to be in school, and I was gone from that whole thing down there in the United States that I had thought was going to be what I wanted it to be, where I had wanted to learn how to do photography. And when I left the camera behind. I left everything behind. I even left my baseball glove, which I still think about to this day. The camera, I don't know if it ever went back to its original owner. But that's what happened. And when I came here in the winter of Christmas of 74, my mother gave me a camera. She gave me a Zenit E camera, which is a Russian camera, and it died within 2 months. But when it died, it allowed me to take it apart without feeling guilty because it wasn't working. And that's how I learned how a camera actually works.
Or in this case, doesn't.
That's right, how it doesn't work. But it taught me how the film was exposed, how the light goes through the camera and everything. I think that was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me, with my mother giving me that camera and it kind of falling apart.
That's so interesting because I got my first camera, believe it or not, Christmas 1974. I had started taking mass media classes in high school, and we had Zenit E's to work with. Now, you went on to build a career as an award-winning photojournalist. I did not. But interestingly, we both started playing with photography the same year.
We didn't have much money. My mother was trying to raise 3 boys on a simple job. So I would take pictures in black and white, but I had no darkroom. So I built my own enlarger out of a shoebox and slide mounts to hold the negatives. The lens I took off the camera and attached it to the shoebox with a little frosted Christmas tree light was inside there. And that's how I built my first enlarger. And it worked well.
The Christmas tree light was the light inside the
Yes, it
the
was.
enlarger?
Yeah. Yes,
Really?
It was a frosted one. But back in 1974, remember, they were big bulbs.
They were
the size of a Volkswagen. But, they were huge. So that's what I used. They didn't get hot, so I wasn't too worried about it melting the negative. And it worked very well. And so I learned a lot there. Now, from that point, I was going to school at Pierrefonds Comprehensive High School back then. It was a pretty big school. And I'd been going to this little tiny school down in the States, and I all of a sudden go from a school from probably no more than 400 students to a school that has 3,000 students. One morning I'm at this school, the next morning I'm at this next school. I lost all my motivation to continue going to school. If I had continued down in the States, I probably would have graduated. So instead of going to classes, I'd go to school, but I wouldn't go to classes. I'd go sit in the library. And in the library, I would take out every single book that they probably had and read them about photography. That's all I did. I went through the whole Time Life series, which probably was the best series back then, about everything. After about 3 months, the vice principal found me. And he happened to be a family friend. And he took me into his office. He actually gave me a cigarette in his office. Back then, smoking...
Times have changed,
Yes, smoking was allowed in school as long as it was in the smoking lounge. But here we are in the vice principal's office having a smoke, and he's trying to explain to me that I need to go to classes. And I was trying to explain to him I wasn't being motivated. And I just didn't feel good. The reason I wasn't being motivated was because packing your bags in the morning and expecting to be at one school and going to another school in another country is very difficult to deal with because you have no school records. They had no records of what we were doing, how we were doing, or where we were going, or even what grade we were in, other than my mother's word and my word. So they stuck me in remedial classes.
I think that was often happened when you had people who would travel from other countries. They put you in remedial to see where you're at.
Exactly. And
if
that's
you rise above that, well, I guess they didn't figure that America and Canada speak the same language, maybe.
Well, that's probably...
It might have been an issue.
But he explained to me that they needed to find out where I was going and what I was capable of doing. But I was so bored in some of these classes that I just said, I'm not going anymore. I'm going to go sit in the library and learn what I want to learn in hopes that it would get me somewhere. And remember, back in the 70s, you could do anything you wanted as long as you worked hard to do it. Does that apply anymore? I don't know.
I thought you were going to say back in the 70s they were allowed to beat you.
Oh, yes, they could beat us all they
because
wanted.
Because they did.
Yes, they did. But it was a fun school. It was a big school, and of course, I had lunch and breaks, and I'd go.
And as you were going through the books in the library, were you attracted to a particular type of photography versus, because there's so many different ways to go, just the subject in general?
Yeah, just everything about it, the technical aspects of it and everything. I always like to take pictures of people. I can't take a picture of a flower if it was the last thing in the world that I had to photograph. People have got to be in my pictures for the most part. It's just about life, what people are doing. I just want to record that. I've always enjoyed that. When I was a teenager, from 16 years on, I just photographed what was in front of me, and that was the kids that I grew up with, my friends.
Yeah, I think you're a superb people photographer. I'm not, so I respect that so much. I don't seem to have that in my toolkit, but I think your photography of people is unparalleled.
Way back then, there were a couple of friends that I had that were pursuing photographic careers also. And they both eventually went off to Ryerson in Toronto. And they both kind of told me the same thing, just concentrate on what you want to do and take your time taking these pictures. And that's what I did. And it was a lot of fun, So that's when I started taking pictures of my friends in 1975, I believe I started. And I kept taking pictures of my friends. It was a group of about 85 of us. Just kept taking pictures all the way up until about 1985. After that, we all started going our own different ways.
Yeah, now I got to say, about a year ago, I went to your Facebook page. You've got a huge album there of those photographs of the black and white of the high school friend. And
the neighborhood project.
The neighborhood project.
Yes, the neighborhood project.
And I loved it, honestly, because we're of a similar age. And those kids look like the kids I grew up with, but I don't have any photographs from that time other than one or two crappy snapshots. So here there's a talented photographer capturing those moments. I loved it.
I can say it. Probably some of the best photos I've ever taken were then. It was something I loved to do. These were people I grew up with, in a little park in Dollard-des-Ormeaux called Coolbrooke Park. I mean, on Facebook page, I believe it's called Coolbrooke Park. There's thousands of pictures there. I've lost a few. I've lost a lot of the negatives in the years since then. But, those pictures started in late 75, going right up until 85, growing up in the suburbs of Montreal, where there was no mass transportation, and people came from all over to hang out in this park, and that was it. It was just a wonderful, wonderful time. 15, 16, 17 years old, 18 years old, going right up into our early 20s before we would all either go off to work, school, universities, or move. There's thousands of pictures, mostly in black and white. It was my formative years, without a doubt, on how to take pictures of people. Not to be afraid to just walk up to somebody and take their picture.
I think what makes those pictures really special is the candid nature of them. And I think it has to do with the fact that, in the 70s, it's not like today, where today everybody, when you see a camera, everybody poses, they're assuming it's going to social media, so they want to make sure they're caught in their best light, or they're memeing or whatever. But back then, you would walk around with a camera, and at some point you would just disappear because you were amongst your friends. That's the beauty of those images, is the candid nature, and nobody's posing.
Nobody is posing. And when you look back, you wonder, nobody even realizes I'm there with the camera. I always had a camera with a roll of film in it, so people just got used to it. They knew there was nothing I could do with those pictures back then. So there was no they
went in a shoebox,
that's
right?
Yeah, to Richard's point, not going to show up on social media.
That's right. Yeah. It's not going to be on social media. Well, they're all on social media now. And, when I was taking these, it was more along the lines of learning, and wonderful photographs happened during that time period. There are some there that I can just I remember, and I will always remember till the day I die. They were just absolutely wonderful photographs of specific evenings or an afternoon or some event. They've taught me so much. And you look at these pictures, it's totally natural, and nobody is mugging for the camera, and nobody is posing. It's just happening. It's just life as it happened back in 1975, 76, and 77, and up until 85. Not like today, like you said, on Instagram. Just ridiculous. It's not even photography as opposed to just exhibitionism. People are trying to show themselves off to try to get somebody to like them. My pictures were not taken for people to like. They were taken so I could just learn how to take pictures, and in hopes that I would have something to look at later on in life.
Yeah, they're very intimate in that sense, and that's it. You get the sense, I felt like I was just another person amongst that group of kids. And what I loved about it is they're just hanging out in the park. Nobody's on their cell phone. Nobody's distracted, just talking, smoking a cigarette, you know.
That's exactly it. My family apartment burned down in 1977, November of 77. And all the pictures that had been taken from 1975 till November of 1977 were damaged. Some of them were lost. They stopped the fire in the building. It was a 48-unit building, I believe. We lived in a top floor, and they stopped the fires in the walls between the apartments on the two sides of our buildings, across from us and beside us. They stopped the fires there. They put holes in the walls, and there was a lot of water damage in our apartment. We lost basically everything. But the thing was, all my negatives and everything else back then were held in these glassine sleeves. It was like a rice paper.
Rice paper or wax. It looked like wax paper.
That's right. It looked like wax paper. Yeah. But the thing was, they all got wet. And we couldn't go in there for, I think it was like 12 hours after the fire. And only after they determined how to get into these different apartments. When we did finally get in there, all my negatives, you know, they were just soaking wet and being compressed because stuff had fallen down on top of it. Some of the stuff was lost totally. I left them all in their sleeves for years. And, you know, finally, after many years, I started taking them apart. And that was in something like 25 years later, sometimes around 2000, I started removing them.
Now, were they stuck to the glassine?
Yes, they were.
Did you have to soak them?
Yes, I did. I actually took them to and made some calls to museums and schools, and nobody seemed to know what to do. So what I did was, well, why don't I just soak them in a soapy water? Don't pull them apart because it would pull the emulsion off. I had tried it on some negatives that were just pictures of like branches or something that were in there. And so I knew that I had to soften them. So that's what I did in a lukewarm water with a little bit of antifungal soap because fungus was starting to form there because, you know, mold, mildew, and all that stuff. That's what I did. I pulled them all apart and gently rubbed them between my fingers to remove any of the glassine or rice paper stuff. And then I washed them carefully, let them hang to dry. I think there was like 110 rolls. So it took some time. So after I finished washing them and drying them, I treated each one with Vaseline.
Vaseline?
Vaseline.
Really?
When you're working in a darkroom way back then, if your negative was scratched in any way, you took the oil off your forehead or on the side of your nose and you put it onto the base, not on the emulsion, but on the base.
I remember that. So funny they taught us that in school.
That's right.
To fill in the scratch.
To fill in the scratch. Yeah. And especially if you had a condenser enlarger. If you had a diffusion enlarger, it wasn't as bad. So it would fill in that scratch. And the scratches, when you would look at the picture, if it was a black scratch, that was emulsion removed. If it was a white scratch, that was a scratch on the polyester base. Yeah. So I tried that when I scanned them, and it worked.
Well, they do drum scans like that, right?
They soak it in oil. Correct.
Yeah, we would mount them in mineral oil, put them on the drums, the glass drums, and the drum scans.
That's right. The process to learn how to wash them properly took a few trial and errors. As a matter of fact, I did lose one very important roll that was taken in 1977. You know, that kind of broke my heart. The emulsion all just wiped off. Just all wiped off. It was just heartbreaking.
So it's that fragile.
Oh, it was that. Oh, yes, it was. And it was some great pictures of our friends, you know, on a Thursday night, you know, not wanting to go to school the next morning. And so we all hung around out in the forest down by where we lived in a big bonfire. And there were some good photos that are long gone. That process took a long time to do. So the first time they were scanned at 2,400 dots. And then eventually it all got redone at a higher resolution of 6,000 dots. So I now have them all done. And that was done during the pandemic. I just redid it all. I rescanned everything during the pandemic and posted them onto that Facebook page called Coolbrooke Park.
So that's what I looked at.
That's exactly what you looked at. Now, you look at those pictures and you go, well, what do all the people think? I contacted almost every single person involved, and there were like 80 people in there. I sent out emails. I phoned them, people that have not seen since 1975. And they all gave me the okay, every single one of them. And, you know, there's pictures in there of the young people having a relationship with another person, you know, a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. And you'd think, you know, they're not talking to each other. There might have been something that caused that breakup to happen. And I wondered, should I talk to them and ask their permission to post these old pictures? even the ones that said, yeah, I don't want to remember that anymore, but you go ahead and do that.
Well, that's great because it was almost like getting a release from them, I guess.
It was. Now, you see, anything over 35 years apparently has some sort of historical value. And I do believe it's...
like us.
Yeah. Like you guys. That's right.
Because he's only 35.
That's right.
He's
Yeah.
not 35.
Use guys.
Yeah.
Thank God we have that ramp for use guys to get into my house. So everybody was contacted. And I didn't get a single no.
The neighborhood project took part, after high school. I just have a question. In high school, was there a photography club? Was there a camera club?
I believe there was. It actually took place during high school and after high school because some of the pictures actually took place in high school. I started school up here in 1974, so late 74, December of 74. So in 1975, the photo club, the photo class that I took at that school, even I was more advanced than the teacher. So I kind of said, no, I'm not going to go there anymore. And the photo club, well, you didn't join a photo club because, well, you just didn't. I was, hanging around with the cool kids.
Too nerdy.
I found out there was a photography club in my high school when I got the yearbook, and I looked in the back, and there was a photography club, and the two guys in it were my friends. I didn't know throughout my high school that there was a photography club.
No, I didn't. We didn't. You got to remember back then too. There was no late buses. I don't believe there was a late bus, and there were no city buses to get home from school. So I didn't join any clubs.
The late bus. That's another memory tweak you just gave me. The late bus.
The late bus.
I walked to school.
Yeah, as opposed to the short bus. But there was the late bus, and you took the late bus, and it took you all through the whole neighborhood, and finally you end up at home. You're always the last one on the bus.
So let me ask you a question. So you talked about 110 rolls of film.
Yeah.
So 36s?
Yeah,
I
36.
guess.
Yeah, I rolled my own film back then.
Let's say
It's the 70s. You rolled your own.
You rolled
You rolled your own. Everything was rolled.
That, yeah.
Yep.
So 3,500 photographs or so. Were you exhibiting them anywhere in those days, or were they just going into your private collection?
No, they were just going into my private collection. One time, the town of Dollard allowed me to show something like 30 pictures of that I had done, 35 by 7s.
Back in the day?
Yeah, back in the day at the Dollard Civic Center. It was a hockey arena. They were in the hallway there. That was sometime about 1978. But those pictures that were up there, a lot of them had been damaged. And so we just put them up for a short time. And eventually in 2018, I printed 35 of them. And there was an exhibit at the art gallery in Dollard. And it was absolutely beautiful. They were all black and white prints. And,
well, I went to that, actually, yeah.
There were some really nice prints there.
And didn't you have some of the subjects of your photographs come?
Yes, some of them were there. It was actually quite nice to see them.
Were they obliged to stand next to their photos for the whole evening?
Yes, they were. We crazy glued their feet to the floor. Yeah.
So, Pete, how do you go from the neighborhood project? At this point, you're in your teens, late teens, and where do you go from there from work? Because I know you ended up working for the Gazette and
I started.
Press.
Well, my first published photograph was in a local newspaper where they misidentified the person in the photograph and misidentified the person who took the photograph. I took the photograph of a friend of mine at a Halloween costume party in 1975, and they attributed that I was the one dressed up as Moses and that somebody else took the photograph. And,
so they reversed the two names?
They didn't reverse. They just put in somebody else's name as the photographer. Okay. So that was the story of my life there.
What was the paper?
It was called the North Shore News. It came out of Roxborough.
I think I remember the North Shore News.
Yes, it came out of Roxborough, Quebec, on the north shore of the island, Pierrefonds, Dollard, and all that. And so that was that. That was my first picture.
Just for fun. What did you get paid for that?
Nothing. Zero. Nothing. It was a neighborhood project.
Okay.
So that's what it was.
According to the paper, you didn't take it anyway.
That's right. Correct. Exactly.
The other guy got paid.
Yeah, some other dude, yeah.
Yeah, so I've got a copy of it downstairs, a Xerox copy, a microfilm copy.
Oh, microfilm.
Yes, and it's on my wall to remind me of how my life was going, because from there, my first picture in a daily newspaper, the Montreal Gazette, my very first picture, I was working as a courier, as a driver downtown in the clothing industry on Chabanel and all that area. Oh, yeah. And I started taking my camera with me. I was 18 at the time, 19. For some reason, the students were striking. This is way back in about 1982 or 81 or 82. And I just happened to run into a crowd of students protesting, going down the street, a fair amount of police officers around them. So I parked the car, came out, and I started taking pictures. And I got a couple of good pictures, and I decided to stop by the Montreal Gazette and said, hey, My name's Peter McCabe. I took these pictures. And they said, oh, let's develop them. And the gentleman by the name of George Cree, the photo editor, wonderful guy, processed them. He liked them. And he says, here, write down your name on this piece of paper. We'll pay you for these pictures. So I said, okay, no problem. So the next day, there it is on page 3 of the Montreal Gazette. Photo of these students attempting, it was a dull picture that they chose, actually, because I had a better one of them pounding on the windows. But it's just a picture of a bunch of students with one police officer in the foreground, with all these hundreds of students behind him walking by. And there it was, a photo by Peter McCabe.
I was going to say, did they get your name right?
No, they didn't get my name right.
Peter
but then
McCabe,
again, Peter McCabe. And I said, Jesus, who's he?
You're getting closer, though,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Hey?
I said, he must have been beside me, but I didn't see him.
So was the check made out to Peter McCabe?
No, the check was made out to me. And when I went in the next day, he says to me, give me an invoice. I said, oh, no, it's okay. He looked at me and he goes, kid, take the money. Eventually, there's going to be a day that all you want is the money. That day has not come yet. It still has not come, and it's only been 10 years.
It's funny you say there was a policeman in the foreground and a group in the background.
Yes.
So I find you very good with foreground, background.
Well, yeah,
with placement of people. I find you do that really well.
I didn't know, because back, you got to remember, I didn't know what the newspapers wanted. I just took pictures, and they chose the picture. Now you look back, they played it right across from one side to the other side of the paper, top. So maybe that's why they chose that particular picture. It's not like today with a newspaper, well, just take a picture and throw it in there. Back then, there's a lot more thought about what picture was going into it. What kind of space did they have available for it? Will this picture tell the story?
Yeah, which slant they would have put on the story, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this picture clearly showed that the police were overwhelmed, one police officer and a very large amount of students coming kind of over a little tiny hill behind him. And so it was clearly indicative of what was going on, that there were a fair amount of students protesting something, and I don't remember what. This is your time. I don't remember that far back.
It was our fault, eh?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Our time.
I'm sure you guys read it on your
it's
tablets.
It's almost like a Peter Parker story here.
Exactly.
It's like from
Something like
Spider-Man. He
You're
goes
right.
in, I got pictures of Spider-Man, and becomes hired as a
exactly.
newspaper
And so that's what I
photographer.
started doing. I started just taking my camera with me, and I wasn't chasing ambulances nor fire engines. I was taking pictures of interesting things that were happening. If I saw something, I would take pictures. Protests mostly, union labor strife.
So while you were working as a driver,
Yes,
sort of thing, you just because you were driving around.
That's right.
you
I was driving
okay.
around. I had a set route and kept my eyes open, and I started listening to the radio. And so, things happened. Like there was a family in one town. Somebody drove home and put the car in the garage and left the car running. Closed the garage, and the fumes. Everybody started dropping in the house during dinner. I forgot to turn the car off. I was sitting on a major street, and all of a sudden I see a police car go by, and didn't think anything of it. Then I saw an ambulance go by, thought nothing of it. And then I saw 2 more ambulances and more police cars going by, and I said, oh, this looks interesting. So this was like the first time I did an ambulance chase, and I followed them to this house. And this is very early 80s, so you could do what I was about to do, and that is walk right up to the victims on the ground.
Oh, come on.
Oh, yeah.
In the house?
No, they had just dragged them out of the
They
house.
dragged him out of the house.
And they were performing CPR on them right there in the front lawn. And I was right there, 2 feet away, taking pictures. CPR being taken and just taking pictures of everything that was happening. Eventually, a neighbor made a complaint to the police that I was there, and then the police asked me to step off the property, and they told me specifically right there and then, they told me this, they said, you can stand on the curb of the property, and there's nothing anybody can do about that. And that's what I did. I went over to the curb. Oh yeah, I wasn't interfering with their job, so that's why I didn't bother them. And that's the important thing, you don't interfere with what they're doing. And so I got these great pictures that played again on page 3, with my proper name. And I didn't know the story, but I contacted the paper and took them down right away, and that was it. And
Did you find it stressful to photograph that situation? Like, were you kind of nervous to even do it? Not at all.
No, just take pictures. Do it, take the pictures and get out of there. And that follows me today. I mean, just go in there and take pictures. Back in 2012, when all the students were protesting in Montreal, and we're talking thousands. I don't know if you guys remember the 6, 7, 8, 10,000 kids protesting every single night downtown.
That was the Red Squares or something,
That's
right?
the Red Square things, yes.
Yeah.
And I'd never seen so many police in all my life. I used to see busloads of police going by, and so we'd follow them, and just busloads of them cops, riot police, fully geared up. I would get in between the riot police on one side and the students on the other and just take pictures and not worry about what was going on behind me, but not to stay in there too long. Just get in there, take your pictures, and get out. And a couple of pictures that I have can clearly show that these people are either mad at me or something behind me. And what it is, it's this riot police that were behind me were being pushed backwards by this crowd on Crescent Street during the F1. They were going after these riot police who had unfortunately gotten separated from their core group. And the anger and in these girls' and guys' faces at these officers was, I had to get it. And so I stayed in between them and just kept taking pictures and turned around and took pictures of the two or three police officers in full riot gear who were being cornered up against a wall. And that's when I said, I'm getting out of here. I backed up out of there. And luckily enough, a row of police were coming down the road. They did not know what was going on, but they soon found out and got those guys out of there. You don't think about this as it's happening.
So you didn't feel in danger,
Not
danger.
at all. I was more worried about making sure I got a picture that showed the anxieties on these people's faces.
And where did those play, those photographs?
That was with the Canadian Press. One picture went around of these women screaming with their arms up and their faces, rabid-looking faces. So
I remember those protests. I got caught. We had gone downtown somewhere, and on the way back, we got caught like at a roadblock with them going by. And it was something to watch. They were quite angry. Like we're parked right. Well, we're trying to cross the street, and they're going across. And as you're waiting in your car, they're just looking, and they're just angry.
Yeah. Everyone's just very angry.
And I'm like, I'm just parked here, man.
It was about tuition increases, wasn't it?
Yes, it was about tuition increases.
Yeah.
But I think it was more about a lot of things. I would work 3 shifts, and that went on for months. Afternoon shift for a daily paper covering regular things, an evening shift covering the protests as they started for one service, and then into the night for another service. You saw the diversity of the protesters that were there. You saw students. You saw political activists, and you saw social activists. Everybody started coming in and trying to get their 10 cents in there. So by the end of it all, it started somewhere around February and ended sometime in the midsummer. Most of the students by then had to go home to where they would live, somewhere in Quebec or Ontario, to work to help pay for their schooling. And so what was left were the city people who the students were worried about getting money for their following semester, but it was the social groups and political groups that were left. So it basically petered out.
But you kept with the protests all the way through?
Yes, yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. We used to walk for hours, and finally near the end, we'd just stay in our car and drive along a parallel road, which led to things like busloads of police coming by, and you're going, oh, something's happening. So you'd park and then go find it and take pictures, and then only to forget where you parked and walking around for 3 hours as your newspaper or service is phoning you every 20 minutes about where the pictures are, and you have to explain to them, I can't find my car. I searched, if you're familiar with Montreal, I walked from McGill University all the way to Atwater. I walked up and down every street that crossed it. Streets, but only on the north side of Sherbrooke. My car was on the south side. So after 3.5 hours, I called a friend, another photographer, and he came by and we hopped in the car and we had to go up a street. But to do that, it was a one-way street. So we had to go down to St. Catherine and come up, and I said, coming up this street, and I said, hey, look, that looks like my car. And it was my car. So those pictures never went in, but it was pretty funny. And then even the editors were kind of laughing. So now whenever I jump out of the car, I take a picture of something pretty close to it. So I'll know, even when I go to a football game or a hockey game, or I'll take a picture of that number where that pole is. So I don't have to look for it.
Yeah, I do that when I go to the airport to pick someone up, and you're leaving your car and you're walking in like, where the hell are we?
Yeah, that's right. It's happened to me at the airport also.
So I have a nightmare about losing my car, about parking it, not being able to get to my car again. It's like a recurring nightmare. But it's never actually happened to me.
Brought on by that Seinfeld episode.
Probably, that's it, yeah.
Okay, so the local newspaper, you went from local newspaper to the major newspapers. You want to talk a little bit about how you became more of a photojournalist as a full-time career?
Yeah. Listen, working for a local newspaper, I was a freelancer for a local newspaper called The Chronicle. It was out in Point Claire, and it serviced the southern side of the island of Montreal and the West Island, and then eventually serviced the whole West Island. It was a nice little paper. It was a 45-page broadsheet paper that took pride in its stories and its photography. So I worked as a freelancer for about 6 years with them. And then finally they said to me one day, well, we don't want to use you anymore. They were giving me about 15 jobs a week. They were going to change the pay structure to paying me only for photographs they would use. Not by the assignment, but they would give me all these assignments, but only pay for what they used. And I would have to pay my own gas. I'd have to pay everything. So I kind of said, nah, thanks, but no thanks. And I walked. So it was kind of tough for a couple months, and I was struggling. And then all of a sudden, Dawson College in Montreal, a gentleman went in there and started shooting. I was, at the time, living kind of close to downtown.
This is December 2006, I think.
Yes, no, this is September of 2006.
September 2006, sorry.
Within minutes of it happening, it was on the radio because somebody on the radios, their child was at the school and called this person at a radio station. I was listening to the radio station and I was out of my house. I was gone. I was flying, driving over to Dawson, and I wasn't that far, knowing full well if this was true, there would be no police on the streets. So I knew that I could drive.
Can you explain that? How did you know that?
Because if there's a shooting, everybody's going there.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, all the police would be drawn to the location.
That's right, because there were reports of multiple shooters and multiple deaths. So I took off. I went through every stop sign and every red light on my way there. I was in the town of Verdun, the city of Verdun, and I went through Villemard, St. Henry, and up north, drove the sidewalk up one road, went down the wrong way of another road because traffic was starting to get stopped, and I knew this was going to happen. And I found a really good parking spot, jumped out of my car, grabbed 2 cameras with a 120 to 300 millimeter lens, knowing that I might not be able to get close. I believe a wide-angle zoom. So I had 2 lenses, 2 bodies, that's it. And so I took off and ran to the school. And I was a smoker back then, so man, that was not easy. I'm taking pictures as I'm running. This was digital, so I wasn't checking the pictures. Just taking pictures of all these people running by me, people crying, people on the floor. And I made my way to the school. I made my way into Place Alexis Nihon, where the police were going store to store. They had dogs with them. People were screaming. Students, hundreds and hundreds of students were coming through because they got out of the school and went straight into Alexis Nihon because it was the fastest way to get out of there. And kids would drop a book and it would be a loud bang and everybody would fall to the floor thinking there was somebody shooting. And so I took some pictures there and I met up with a La Presse photographer.
Being the French newspaper.
The French newspaper.
In Montreal at the time, yeah.
And we agreed to let's work together. We'll watch each other's back. A wonderful, wonderful photographer by the name of Yvonneau Demers. Absolutely wonderful, who now works for the CBC, I believe. So we got out and worked our way against all the flow of people. And everybody's yelling at us, don't go there. There's people with guns and they're shooting. And we just kept walking at a quick pace and got to one point where we could see the school and we could see something was happening right in front of the school. And I was just taking pictures of all these people with guns without police uniforms. We didn't know if they were the people shooting or what. We were just taking pictures of them.
You're seeing people holding firearms.
Yes, crouched behind cars, standing there with guns out, and we didn't know who they were. So we were just taking pictures. So after about 15 minutes of that, I called various news agencies. One of them didn't really treat me very well when they answered the phone. Didn't give me any seriousness.
So you're calling and saying, hey, there's this incident happening in Montreal.
Yeah, I called them.
I'm photographing it. You want the pictures. Is that how that works? Okay.
I'm here. I can see this. Are you interested? One person kind of gave me the brush off. Another person came along, took my phone because the phones weren't working very well because everybody was using their phones.
And networks were overloaded. Eh?
That's right. And I mean, I'm in front of the school. You see all these police all of a sudden just showing up in uniform, big guns drawn and everything, even though we're kind of crouched behind this bush. And behind us, maybe a few hundred yards, are a blocked off area. You can see the police have the area blocked off with lots of people looking and photographers hiding there because they can't get to where we are.
Oh, you're inside the perimeter.
We're inside the perimeter.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
I didn't take any notice of this until after, when I looked at my pictures. So this guy comes running up, asks me if he could borrow the phone because his wasn't working. He called the Canadian press. They treated him pretty good. They said, yeah, we'll take whatever picture you got. So he gave me the phone back, and we're sitting there contemplating on what we're going to do next. We were maybe about 250 feet from the front door of the school. So I picked up my phone. I was going to phone this other service. And when I pushed the redial button, it gave me Canadian Press. And I was shocked. I remember the person saying who he was at the Canadian Press. And I go, oh, what's that?
Oh, you didn't work for Canadian Press then?
I had done a couple pictures for them before, but I said, how did that happen? So I said, hi, it's Peter McCabe. I'm at Dawson. And he says the magic words, whatever photographs you take, we want them. Thank you very much. That was it. And he said it in such a respectful manner. And it was like, wow, I'm not wasting my time. I don't need to go home. I can stay here. And I thought, oh, I might make $75, risk my life. Wow. It turned out that I got a lot more than that.
I hope so.
I eventually made it to the front of the school, got some pictures that eventually went around the world, front pages of many, many newspapers, and it eventually won me a National Newspaper Award here in Canada, which is the top award.
I think I knew that.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I was going to bring it up. Yeah.
And so they themselves, these photographers here in Montreal, who are probably two of the finest in Canada, basically said, we want you to freelance for us. We're going to use you. So they have, and they're just both absolutely wonderful, wonderful gentlemen. And wonderful to work with, and they've taught me a lot. Shooting for a wire service is different. So I still shoot with others, the daily newspaper here in Montreal and other news services. But these two guys, just watching them and listening to them, that I think really helped form what I can do and how I can do it.
And opened you up to other news services and
yes.
stuff, and really took off. Because after that,
it took off big time.
After that, you got the F1, right?
That's right. They would have me go to the F1.
So the Formula One race.
The Formula One race. Yeah. That's right. Which was kind of and the Montreal Canadiens.
Oh yeah.
And the CFL and Major League Soccer. All this stuff was happening.
Well, it all came out of that.
It all came out of that.
No kidding.
Oh, yes, it did. I was specifically working for them for about 3 years as a freelancer. And eventually the Montreal Gazette daily newspaper started calling me again. They had change of employees at various spots, and person wanted me to come work with them. I said, sure. Anyway, so that's how that worked. And the F1 was fun, but you can only watch a car speed by so many times, so many years. So I think I'd done 5 F1s. And they're nice. They're nice, but you're not walking around taking pictures of everything and anything. You're given a spot and a duty, and you're there. And I was at the Senate curve for many years, and then put me along what's called the Quebec Wall for a year or two. I can't remember. And then the most fun was the most fun.
I know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
This is the story. Yeah, this is a good story. Yeah.
You got to remember there are a lot of photographers there from around the world. The tent for media is just packed with photographers, and the equipment is just piled up. So the race is over. I'm on the way back to the tent when the boss says to me, we need you to go over to pit because the winning car is going to come in and you need to go up onto the scaffolding and you're going to take some pictures of them presenting the trophy and all this stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, oh God, I don't want to do this, because I know I've seen it before. It's like the picture of an athlete biting the gold medal. Why are they?
Cliche, right?
Oh my God!
I gotcha.
You do it because, somebody wants it. So what it was supposed to be just, they're going to hand them the trophy, take your pictures, the champagne's going to flow, whatever. So I get over to this area where the gate is closed and all the photographers are lined up. And there's maybe about 50 to 60 of them. And it's hot. And so I get to the back of the line because I'm lazy and I don't want to be there. And so all of a sudden the gate opens. You can see that the pits are now cleared. The gate opens and all the photographers go rushing in like little school children in the rain, trying to get out of the rain and get back to class. I kind of waddled my way in, carrying my equipment and just looking around because I'm looking around going, wow, this is kind of neat. And all of a sudden, a crowd of people is all around me. And I look up in the stands and all the photographers are where I'm supposed to be. And I'm thinking, uh-oh. And I see my boss looking down at me with a big fucking grin. And I am standing in the middle of this. And what it is, it's all the pit crew. And in comes Hamilton in his car and parks it right in front of me.
Nice.
Right directly in front of me. I look up and now the two bosses are both smiling and one's got his thumb up in the air. And I've just taken pictures 2 feet away from him as he takes his helmet off and as he's giving kisses to everybody because he had just won the race. Nobody noticed a thing other than my boss seeing me.
Yeah, like no one said, hey, you need to move out of here, buddy. They just
Nobody
let you
said
do your
anything
thing.
because it
Wow.
all happened so much, so fast. They must have thought I was with the crew.
Right.
Even though I've got this bright orange photo vest on that I still have. And in my past, it all says, photography for the Canadian press and all. But I'm just standing there taking these wonderful pictures of him jumping out of his car, coming right up to the guy standing beside me. And, you could feel the heat off of his face when he took the helmet off.
Oh, that's so cool.
And the sweat is on him. And he's just the hugest smile. And I got these great pictures. I didn't want to overstay my welcome in there. So I kind of got out of there. Not going up to where I was supposed to be, but getting out of the area. When the other photographers who had to wait to get down from there because for all the crew and everything and the presentation of the trophy and all that, so they had to wait all that. I'm sitting already in the tent going, I hope these pictures are okay. I hope what they wanted. And of course, they were.
Well, you got to work really fast now, right?
Oh, yeah,
you
you
got to
gotta-
think fast.
yes, yeah.
And to your initial point, you got to be aware of what's in the frame.
That's right.
So you don't produce something, you got Hamilton's face,
That's right.
and then there's a bunch of stupid stuff going on around.
I was
it,
shooting
right?
with a 14 millimeter.
So that's a very wide angle.
Oh, it's
lens for
extremely
people.
wide on a full frame camera, 14-24.
Okay.
I couldn't even look through the camera because it was so packed in there. I was packed in there. They were up against
You see, you were
it.
just aiming at
I'm
aiming
just
it at
like, I was held up against my face, but I was just pointing and shooting because it was such a wide shot. I couldn't mess.
Right.
This is the Hail Mary shot. You're praying that it's going to be the shot, and it was the Hail Mary shot that worked, and it came out pretty good. Listen, it wasn't a Dawson photograph that went front page around the world, but it was better than anything else anybody else had that particular
that's the key,
race.
right? Yeah.
That's what it is. And this is the thing. A lot of people don't realize this. You can go to a football game, a hockey game, a baseball game, a F1 race. It all comes down to one photograph. That one photograph that's usually taken at the end of the event, showing the elation of the winner or the dejection of the loser. That's it. You can spend hours taking pictures of cars rushing by, hockey players smashing into each other, boxers beating the hell out of each other, blood on you, which I got a good story on that in a minute. These things happen, but it doesn't matter. They want the picture of them biting that gold medal or holding the belt or the trophy. That's it.
That's the money shot.
That's the money shot. So you're spending hours doing wonderful photography to get a standard shot later on, which takes me to boxing. Boxing, you're beside the ring, and you're only allowed one side of the ring. You can't move around, and there's always all these photographers, so you're packed in there. You shoot all the matches before the big match. Big match, it was a big world boxing match. I had to go to the bathroom, and the boxing match is about to start, and I'm going, do I have time to go to the bathroom? Yeah, it'll probably go 18 rounds, so maybe I'll go. But then I thought, no, I'm not going to go, because it'll be too hard to get my spot back after that. So I go up. Bell rings. 20 seconds later, the local guy knocks the guy out.
Come on.
Over. Right there. I got this
He
great...
knew you had to go to the bathroom.
And I had to go to the bathroom, but I decided to stay, and I'm going to tell you why in a second. I stayed. I got these wonderful pictures, even of the winner kind of looking down in disbelief that this guy in front of me is out cold, and he's back there going, oh, did I just win? And he just won in 20 seconds, first round. Which brings me the reason why I didn't go to the bathroom. Many years ago, and I hope my boss doesn't listen to this, they had me at tennis in Montreal, the Grand Prix tennis, and I didn't know anything about tennis, just take pictures. So they had me up high. I'm going, oh God, when is this match going to end? I have to go to the bathroom. So, beautiful warm day in August, about 2008 or 2009, I think. A tennis match is going on, and I go, I got to go to the bathroom. So I decide to go to the bathroom. And while I'm going to the bathroom, men's urinal standing there, I hear the crowd go wild, absolutely wild. I go, wow, somebody just scored. And I come out and it's over. I'm doing up my fly as I'm walking by and go, oh, what do I do now? So I took a couple pictures of people's heads, because everybody's standing up. I went down, went into the back, went into the tent where all the photographers are. I looked at my boss and said, man, I couldn't get any shots. Everybody stood up.
Do you remember who it was that won?
Oh, it was the women's. It was the women's final. And anyway, so it was kind of funny. And I told them years later, that, I was in the bathroom and they were laughing because an accident happened at an F1 pretty much in the pit lane as they were pulling out. And one of the photographers came out, running out. He was watching it on TV. I believe his duty was to edit. He came out with a camera and started taking pictures. And I'm looking at this through a 400 millimeter lens with a 1.4 converter. So it's about about 560 millimeter lens. I see him taking pictures and then all of a sudden looking at the camera, and it looks like he apparently swore, and he turned around and walked away. He forgot to put the card in the camera.
Oh, no.
And this is one of Canada's top photographers. So, mistakes happen.
See, I thought you were going to say at the boxing match you were wearing one of those personal urination devices.
No.
That enabled you, like the truckers use. So nothing like that, right?
Well, speaking of wearing weird stuff, I mean, the F1 is one kind of race. Montreal had NASCAR for a few years, and NASCAR is a different type of race. They use a different type of fuel that when it burns, you don't see the flame.
I think it's more of a chase than a race.
That's exactly what it is, but it's a totally different vibe. The Euro trash that goes to F1 is quite entertaining, because these people are just like so wealthy and everything else. They just don't care. To me, I wouldn't want to be one of them. But the people that go to NASCAR are the beer-guzzling hometown people that have great characters to them. They're characters. Whereas F1, it's about shooting the car from the very front with the guy sitting there and everything else. With NASCAR, it's about shooting the car from the side and getting all the stickers and all that, the shape of the car that way. So here I am going to my first NASCAR for the Canadian Press, and we're supposed to get there for 8 o'clock in the morning. We park downtown. We take a special shuttle bus to an area that takes a little boat to the site, from one end of the site to the other site where the press tent is. And as I get off, I'm wearing a pair of shorts. And the guy looks at me and goes, "You can't go through pit lane wearing shorts. Can you put some pants on?" So, what? My boss is looking at me going, "You have pants?" I said, "No, I got something in the car, I think." So he says, "Go get them." Back on the boat, went to the other side of the track. They shuttled back to the car downtown Montreal. The only pants I had was a pair of snow pants. And now we're talking, laugh all you want. It's August. Remember, it's August.
Yeah.
And it's warm in Montreal. That's 30 degrees Celsius. So I get them and I don't put them on because it's the only pair I have. And I get back on the shuttle, go back to the spot where the boat takes you. And I'm on the boat. And when I get off the boat near the pit, I put the pants on over my shorts. I said, "Okay, you can go in." So I go in, cross the pit lane. Now it's a little bit later. They said, "Okay, you're going to be shooting over by the center corner again," because that's where I've always been. And so I get over there. But before I go, I take 12 bottles of water with me because I know it's going to be hot and I'm going to need a lot of water.
And you got the pants to store them in, too.
Yes, exactly. I go trucking over to my spot at NASCAR wearing snow pants, and it was fucking hot. And I don't do well in hot. So I brought all these bottles of water, and I'm just pouring water down my throat, on my head, and down my pants. I'm pouring. I go off into the forest. There's a little bush area. People are seeing me do this, and I don't have time to tell them why. At the end of the race, I go through the pit lane again, get into the press tent, and one of the main media guys comes over and says, "You wore those pants all day?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, you could have taken them off once you got through pit. You don't have to wear them when you're on the track. You just have to wear them in the pit." And everybody was laughing, except me. And of course, I laugh at it now, but I suffered terribly for those pictures.
Wow.
I'd pay to see that.
Oh, yeah, I would too.
It was fun.
I'm surprised it didn't show up on camera. Like when you go to a football game and there's a guy picking his nose, and the camera zooms in.
Don't go there because
water down his snow pants.
Well, what's worse is when you're on the job and you are on camera and you didn't bring that proper equipment with you when something happens in front of you, such as at a football game where the boss saw me as the action comes into the end zone and all I have is my big 200-400 and I don't have my 24-70 on a second body that in case something happens directly in front of me, that did happen directly in front of me and I couldn't get pictures. And I thought, he's not going to know. And of course he knows because he's watching the game and he sees them run right into me and like, why isn't Peter taking pictures? Oh, he doesn't have his other camera.
I didn't realize it. Like you said that it comes. So that's a representative of the wire services there, actually at the event. The boss?
No, he's one of the photographers who's probably he is the boss, the higher up. He's taking pictures, but he's also going through pictures as they come in.
I see. Okay,
and uploading, I guess, to
that's right.
straight to the wire service.
Some of the photographers. Well, I wasn't. One photographer will be going around or be at a position where he can quickly take pictures and take them back right away, and they can be edited and sent out.
So the NASCAR is run on the same track. It's on
the same track. It was run on the same track. They don't do NASCAR anymore.
They reconfigured the track, I guess.
No, I believe it was the same thing.
Because NASCAR is usually like a circle.
That's right. It's turn left there. Oh, turn left there. Oh, keep turning left. That's what it normally is. No, here they did it. I think it was the Busch series they did here. I can't remember exactly which series. I may be mistaken, so don't be screaming. So that series was run out of Montreal for a couple of years. And those people are really interesting. They're more down to earth. They're more like me and you.
Yeah, it's a different crowd. Yeah.
Speak for yourself.
Well, yes. Yes, Mr. David, Sir David. Yes.
Now, confirm this rumor. People say that people only go to NASCAR because there's going to be car crashes.
Well, I think they go to any race just because they're hoping for that car crash. I remember the very first F1 I did. It was right after that major crash. I remember the pictures that I took of the gentleman with his face all scarred up. Very, very, very famous F1 driver. And his car died in front of me. And I took pictures of him getting out, walking away, and I've lost that negative. But no, people are there to see they want to see a crash. There's the diehard fans that are Ferrari or McLaren drivers. They're rooting for those people. I think the majority want to see something.
a little action.
They want to see a little action. It's like, why do people go to hockey games if there's no fighting?
So I don't go anymore.
That's right, That's why so many people go to a boxing match. A car race is not going to break out, and nor is a hockey game. They want to see somebody get pummeled.
Human nature.
Human nature is there.
So you're still shooting for the wire services, the local papers, and
COVID kind of put the kibosh on a lot of stuff. I sat around for a couple of years, tried to do a couple of things myself, but things have kind of picked up now in the past 6 months.
So let's go back to COVID. Now, during COVID, you started an interesting project. When the lockdown came here in Montreal and pretty much everywhere, everybody was confined to their homes, and so the streets became kind of abandoned. So you started documenting this.
Yeah, listen, it was kind of boring sitting around doing nothing, especially if you live with your brother. Oh, God. Anyway, so it got really, really boring. Actually, what happened was the very first night when our premier decided to say, as of midnight tonight, you can't go out. You got to stay home. You can't
the curfew.
The curfew. Yeah. So I said to myself, what an interesting thing. I wonder if people are going to obey that. So me and my brother headed downtown at 10:30 in the evening. And as we're going down St. Catherine Street, it was already empty, desolate, like I'd never seen it before. Now we're looking at absolutely nothing and quiet. So I took a picture and I posted it on Facebook. People just loved it. So I decided I got nothing else to do. I have IPTV, which is 7,000 channels, but there's nothing on. So I decided to go out again. And so I started going out every few nights, going downtown or somewhere where there would normally be people. And I started going out for around 7 o'clock in the evening to take my picture sometime around 7:30 when things are supposed to be happening.
So you weren't breaking curfew at that point?
No, because I do not have a press card. There is none. I don't have any credentials to verify who I am. We don't have that in Canada. A newspaper will create their own, hey, here's your pass to get into the building. So when you see somebody from La Presse, Journal Montréal, or anything else wearing a badge, that's to show that they can get in their own building. They know who we are. They've seen us. They can tell by how we act, what we carry it, and stuff like that. So I knew that the press were not obliged to stay at home. They needed to go out. They actually made that announcement. I did get a letter from Canadian Press stating that I would be...
You're on assignment, kind of thing.
I could be on assignment. I could be out looking for something. So I have this letter, and I carried it with me. And so I would go out and take these pictures. And I got these absolutely wonderful pictures of Montreal.
Yeah, I've seen them. Yeah, they're great.
They're absolutely wonderful. And at one point, I did start getting paranoid. Listen, at the very beginning, nobody knew what was happening. Am I going to die tomorrow because some idiot walked by me and sneezed on me or whatever? Am I going to have to wash my hands and I was washing my hands all the time. And I was in Old Montreal, and it was kind of raining. And remember, this is March, the end of March, in Old Montreal, down by a church, down by Bon Secours Market. And I was looking west along Bon Secours Market when I turned and I saw the church being lit by this blue light looking east. And I put my camera down and just to kind of take in the moment. And all of a sudden, there's two people walking right beside me. It looks like a young couple falling in love. He was holding a bottle of wine and they're looking at each other and just walk right by me it's like I'm not even there. And it kind of freaked me thinking, oh my God, did they just give me COVID? You know, the paranoia was high back then.
I remember.
It's like the first time I saw a flying saucer. Do I go to my basement, wrap myself in tinfoil and hide there?
Put a pin in that. I want to come back to that, actually.
Yes. Well, that just happened, trust me. Anyway, so I was a little paranoid, and I got in my car and I took a couple deep breaths because I was holding my breath. I didn't want to breathe the air around me. And so I got in the car and I started thinking, I got to stop. I can't do this anymore. I went out for a few months and I got some wonderful pictures, but I got kind of bored with that. So there's some absolutely beautiful, wonderful pictures.
Are they on your Facebook page as well?
Some of them are on my Instagram at Montreal McCabe.
Yeah, we'll give all your links in the show notes, right? So people can find your stuff.
Right. What I found fascinating about the images is they have a very post-apocalyptic feel because there's nobody there, but not like buildings have fallen down vines have grown. But it's odd to see the beating heart of the city empty.
Yeah, there's familiar scenes, right? Yeah. You recognize it, but where's all the people?
That's right. Where's the people? Where's the cars? Yeah. And what was really interesting was the fact that cars had not been around now for a couple of weeks. As I was taking pictures going along near the end of mid-April, the air was getting cleaner. You could see farther.
No.
Oh, yes, you could. You can actually see in the picture of Leonard Cohen on Crescent, the harvest moon.
Oh, that big painting of Leonard Cohen, yeah.
But you can actually, in the original pictures on the computer, you can zoom in and see into the windows of the office buildings because the air is so clear. And then when I went down by the Olympic Stadium, up on Sherbrooke, where you look south, you can see, at nighttime, you can see the lights on Mont Saint Bruno and all that.
Now, was it you who posted the images of like the rats downtown?
No.
Okay, so I saw this.
But I did see them.
Someone was doing the same sort of project. I forget if maybe it was New York, and the rats were just prowling the streets because now with the restaurants and everything closed, they had no food to get, nowhere to go, and they were just vacating.
And there was nobody to chase them away, and there was nothing around to scare them. Yeah. You'd be driving along, some of the side roads, and there were rats all along the edge of the sidewalk, just scurrying along. Yeah, I saw a lot more rats. Where normally you would have seen them in the restaurant areas, the alleyways, now you saw them along everywhere.
Weird, eh?
Yes, it was. It was kind of weird. And during that whole time, nobody ever stopped me to ask me what I was doing. No police officer. That's right. No police officers either.
Well, I was going to ask you that. So you never stopped?
Only at the very, very end when the premier closed it down for a New Year's Eve. I was downtown. I was for the Canadian Press, and it was empty downtown. And all of a sudden, I see all these police cars going by, and I said, oh, yeah, so something's going on. So I followed them to Old Montreal, where there was supposed to be a protest. They weren't there, but we saw police cars going up St. Lawrence. So we immediately followed them up. They went across over to the Université Québec à Montréal, UQAM, which is Berry Square. And sure enough, there was a protesters of about 100 of them. And the police came down on them pretty darn quick. Corralled them, and I got some great pictures of that. And it was only then that a couple of police officers asked me who I was, because this group of anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers, they had photographers with them. And they were taking pictures, and they were also being corralled. And they asked me, and I pulled the paper out. And the first person looked at it and was kind of like, what do I do with this? And then the other one came over and looked at it and read it and then looked at me and said, okay, just stay out of our way. And I said, I always do. That's why we use a telephoto. And so that was the only time.
That was a great project.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. So where are you at now? What are you working on now? I know you've gotten into large format printing.
Yeah. Things have started picking back up again in the last 6 months with the wire services, with commercial photography. That's where it is. Commercial photography, working for different organizations, doing different things. They have events. I cover the events for them. They like the style that I had in the newspaper. I'm still working with the Montreal Gazette, not as much. Canadian Press, a little bit more. I've done a couple things for Agence France Presse, Toronto Star. It is coming back slowly. The real takeaway on this is you've got to go over to commercial. It pays 3-4 times as much, and you're doing the same thing for them. Events. A couple of days ago, typical, the state of Hawaii representatives come to Montreal to speak about the state of Hawaii and why people should visit there. And so they're speaking to 50 to 60 tourist agents for the full day. So for 3 hours in the morning, I traveled around. I took these 2 young ladies, beautiful young ladies. One was a ukulele player, one was a dancer of the Hawaiian dance. And we drove around to 5 different spots in Montreal and photographed them and videotaped them performing, 12 to 15 second clips. So we did that in 5 different spots to show Hawaii coming to Montreal. And then for the rest of the day, they had seminars that I photographed the seminars working. And then they had cocktails. I photographed people in the cocktails. Then they had a dinner, photographed people at dinner. And then awards and things like this, presentations. So I've done that now already for the state of Florida twice this year. I've done it for Hawaii. I've done it for Louisiana. I've done it for Ireland. All stuff like that.
You mentioned videotape because the digital cameras now will take videos as well. So has that become a substantial part of your workflow?
Yes. The internet is video and moving pictures. So that's the future. 15-second, 20-second videos. Now, the greatest thing about video is when it first started, we didn't really know much about it. So I had a camera with a VR lens, and then these VR lenses have little motors in them that help stabilize everything, and the focus and back and forth. So one of my first videos was a wonderful young man by the name of Vladimir Tretiak.
Oh, Tretiak.
Yeah, Tretiak.
Yeah, so we just had the anniversary of the 72 series.
That's right.
So
we went to talk to him about it. And this is way back. And so I got my camera, I got my video, I set it on video, and I put it on a tripod, and I forgot to turn the VR off, and I forgot to turn the focus off. Wonderful listening to this guy. This guy's just a great guy. I've got this great picture of him somewhere, me and him, and the 45-minute interview with this guy. I get home and I listen to it. There's this zzz through the whole thing. It's the VR and autofocus.
Oh, no.
Are both fighting to try to
That's right.
counteract
Through the whole
tripod.
video.
Yeah.
Through the whole video. Luckily, the reporter had a Zoom recorder, and I was able to switch it over and
Save the day.
Save the week.
So speaking of, who are the most prominent or famous people you photographed? Just give us a few. I'm sure there's a lot, some names for people out there.
Well, listen, Randy Quaid.
Oh.
Randy Quaid got into a little trouble down in the States, and he ended up coming up here. And, he was a handsome man, and we all remember him from Christmas Vacation and all that stuff. The shitter's full.
Yeah.
And so they said, you got to photograph him. He's got a court appearance. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm looking for this guy. And all of a sudden, this Grizzly Adams comes out of the door from where the police have him. I had to photograph him. And he was pretty nice. Who else? I don't know.
Politicians?
I've shot, Mr. Trudeau was pretty good. What was interesting with Stephen Harper, when Stephen Harper became prime minister, he basically brought the American mentality of keep the press far away from me, make sure there's a lot of security around me. Nobody can get near me to shake my hand, to say hello. And so we all had to shoot with telephotos with this guy, and it was awful because he walked around with a stick up his ass anyways, he's the kind of guy when he sends his kid off to school, he shakes his hand rather than give him a hug.
They were notorious for not holding news conferences anymore.
Right.
They just stopped, as Trump did towards the end too, right?
That's right.
I barely recall the years he was prime minister, I should say. I don't remember.
Listen, the night that Justin Trudeau won, it was night and day. Next thing you know, you're standing beside the guy. You're standing around taking pictures. Listen, the security was there. Yeah. They knew who we were. They were going to watch us, but they're not going to watch us like they're going to watch everybody else. So it was like night and day. It still is like night and day. Anybody who thinks they have that kind of importance and that they are that special to have that kind of security to keep people away, there's something wrong with that mentality. Mr. Trump could use it because I know a lot of people would like to, bop him on the top of the head or something like that. Or an American president.
Including Nancy Pelosi, apparently.
That's right, sure. Yeah, that's right.
Punch him out if he showed up at the
Putin or somebody like that.
The 6th.
But, Canada and places like this, we do have people that are, we're watching for them when we're taking pictures. People that are out of the ordinary. It's happened. I was at an event when the mayor of Montreal was speaking about the agglomeration, about putting Montreal as one big city, and he was out giving an interview, and I was maybe about 20 feet away, chowing down on a couple of Danish and free coffee, and because I'd already got my pictures and
press privileges.
Press Tremblay, right? Near Tremblay,
yes, that's right. Yeah,
okay.
My face is full. I'm happy. It's a Tuesday. I didn't want to be there. All of a sudden, there's a commotion going on over there, and I dropped my coffee right on the floor and I spit out this Danish, which was really good, and I didn't want to do that. And I come running around and I see he's got pie all over his face. Oh. And I come around and, it's just, I get in there right in front of him and I say, hey, Mr. Trump, look at me. And he looks at me and I take these pictures. And he's got pie all over his face. So I told my paper about it, the local paper. They sent me to take pictures of the local people talking. I did. I sent them those pictures. But then I said, dude, I got these other pictures of Trump. He's getting a pie in his face. No, we don't want to use that. So I sold it to the Canadian press, took it right away, and it went across Canada.
I remember the incident.
There it is, and it's a great photo. Him looking straight at me, and it was done by this guy Pop Tart. And,
that's right. Yeah.
And so I ran after the guy who did it, and the police had their guns drawn on this guy because they didn't really know how much of a serious threat he might have been.
Well, it could have been an exploding pie.
That's
Who would know, right?
Well, assault with a deadly pie.
That's exactly it.
Well, those meringue, when they have the meringues, those little points, you could take out a nine with some meringue.
It was, but the worst part of it was I had to spit out this wonderful Danish.
I'll tell you what, we'll get you a Danish when this interview is over. We'll make that up to you.
What would you say from the beginning of your career to today? What is the state of photojournalism today? How has it changed and evolved from going out with a couple of rolls of film, shooting an event, and now today where you practically have to wear a video camera on your head?
Photojournalism as it was in the 60s, 70s, 80s, it's very rare you'll see something like this much anymore. Now it's newspapers and magazines. They just want a picture. They want it clear. They want to know who, what, where, when, and why of that picture. And, sometimes the papers, they don't even want to know anything. They just want a picture, any picture. Take it with your phone and give it to us now. Just put it up. We don't care. And that's the state of it now. I'm working with this wonderful, wonderful reporter, Christopher Curtis. He at one time worked with the Gazette, and I work with him now. And he takes his time and works on stories for weeks on end. I go in and photograph for him. He'll use multiple photographs. And he'll tell me what the story is about. He'll let me know this is the story. This is what it's about. This is the people that are involved. Let's convey that message in a photograph. It's absolutely wonderful to work
younger
for this
guy, older guy?
He's a younger guy in his 30s. He does a lot of indigenous stories, a lot of down and out people stories. And I admire this guy more than any other reporter I've ever met.
And he's writing for the Gazette now?
No. He used to be at the Gazette. These poor people at the Gazette, they're no longer given the time or resources to do their job as well as they can.
So where's he now? He's got a Substack or something?
Yeah, he's his own thing. He's got a blog. If you're hearing me, go check this guy out, Christopher Curtis.
The blog is The Rover.
Yeah, The Rover. And he's absolutely wonderful. His writing is fantastic. And he understands the importance of a good visual. Good visual leads people into saying, okay, what's this about? And that's the important thing, a visual that's attracting the attention. So people then read the story. I remember doing a picture and going into the Gazette late one night, many, many, many years ago, when you guys were in your 50s. So we're talking about 60 years ago. And this editor pulled me aside. And remember when we used to always go to Kelly's, there was this guy I'd go over, Leon.
Yeah.
He was this editor. He pulled me over when he first saw me and he says, "Follow me, kid." And he shows me the wall of shame where the picture did not meet the story or something was wrong. You make sure that what you give us corresponds to what we're writing about. But it was a wonderful piece.
So kind of a J. Jonah Jameson character sort of thing.
This guy he was great. I think he passed away recently, but nobody ever taught me any of this stuff. There was nobody ever there to guide me, to show me, to tell me. Not until Canadian Press. And that was in 2006. Nobody told me this is how you should do it. This is how it needs to be done. I knew that I had to get the spelling correct of a person's name. Once at the local paper, I took a picture of a gentleman, and the wonderful world of digital cameras came along with the fact that the professional ones had a microphone and you could talk into it. So I photographed this gentleman at a golf course that just opened up. And when I gave the picture to that paper with the spelling of that person's name, the way he spelled it, that I have a voice recording of it, the editor phones me and says, "Are you sure that's how it's spelled?" I said, "You bet I am." He says, "Well, we can't find that name in the phone book." Is it possible that he doesn't have a phone? But because of the fact that they couldn't find his name spelled in the phone book, I had spelt it wrong. So they changed the spelling without telling me. And when the paper went to press, I saw that. They got a call, tried to blame it on me. And then I sent them, "No, I spelt it this way. Here's the sound file." End of story. Now, that's happened 3 times in my experience. Spelling of the name is extremely important. It happened twice at a major newspaper. Luckily, the person that contacted me was a union person, and he was about as high up as you could get. And when he says, "You got it spelled wrong," I said, "No, I did not. Here's the file." End of story. So when I'm on the job, it's spell your name into the camera, please. Even if your name is Jack, spell it, please.
So no more Peter McCoodle.
No more Peter
McClacky.
Yeah. No more Peter McClacky.
That's it.
It's going to be his nickname now.
That's right.
I'm going to put that in my contacts for
So,
you.
yeah. So getting back to where's it going? Oh, man. Video, these 15, 20-second videos, and you don't use a DSLR, you use an actual video camera because that's what video cameras do better. The image stabilization on a video camera, far superior than anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because they're designed to do
Sure, we'll get a lot of people writing in.
Yeah.
Oh, probably, yeah. And you're working with a drone now, I think,
Yeah,
right?
I'm working with a drone, and that's a lot of fun. Now, there are so many restrictions. You can only go, I think it's 400 feet in the air. You can't go over crime scenes. You can't do all kinds of weird things. Like, look where we live right here. And I'm out in the middle of the boondocks. I can fly my drone. But if I take it across the street, all of a sudden I get a warning, and it sends the drone back because it's a landing zone for the airport.
For the
that's in
airport.
this town.
Yeah. What do you mean it sends the drone back? What?
It gives me a warning, and if I venture too far over there, I go into the landing zone, and these are all GPS guided, registered.
Isn't
takes
it
it back.
because I flew drones a few years ago
Oh no!
before all this happened.
These new drones, the DJIs, they're all GPS coordinated.
My house, a friend of mine had just bought a drone. He came over to
Yeah.
the house, and he's like, if I turn it on, it won't even allow me to fly because you're
that's
too
it.
close to the airport.
Brilliant.
And I'm a good distance from the airport.
you are.
But I'm still in the excluded zone.
I think
mind
it's
you,
9
that's it.
kilometers from the airport or something like
Yeah,
that.
so if you
Yeah.
cross west of St. John's, you can fly. East of St. John's towards the airport,
Okay.
you can't. So I guess we're going to wrap this up.
I think so. Peter, any final thoughts for the people out there?
Young people, if you're listening to this, get into video.
There you go.
There you go.
That's it.
Plastics.
Plastics, my friend.
Oh, it's got to be plastics. Yeah, that's the future.
And recovery of plastics in the ocean. There's your future.
Oh, there's a future, yeah.
So I urge everybody to go to Peter's Facebook page. We'll put the links in the show notes. You'll see all the black and whites from the 70s and 80s, right? The Neighborhood Project.
Yeah.
And then Instagram for the pandemic photographs.
Yes, that's right. That's not all of them, but some of them.
All right, thanks, Peter.
Thank you,
We're done.
Peter.
Thank you guys very much. Now get out of here.
All right, Dave.
Don't have to tell us twice.
So we'll see you next week.
Yeah, next week.
Thanks.
Take care.